Most people collapse the moment they lose support. They panic, crumble, or beg for validation. In this video, we solve the rarest problem of all: how to become untouchable when you stand completely alone. Because only the individual who thrives without allies becomes the one others fear, follow, or attempt to imitate. Look around you. Every empire, every dynasty, every fragile human being is chained to the approval of others. They seek comfort, applause, and a tribe to hide behind. But understand this: nothing corrupts power faster than dependence. There comes a moment in life where isolation is not a curse, but a weapon. When you are stripped of support, stripped of rescue, stripped even of illusion, what remains is your raw, unfiltered strength. The kind of strength kingdoms were built on and destroyed by. Standing alone does not make you weak. It reveals whether you were ever strong at all. And those who endure this trial become something rare, something formidable, a presence no one can shake, influence, or destroy. In this lesson, you will learn how to rise from solitude not as a victim, but as a sovereign force. Mastering emotional autonomy begins with a simple, brutal truth. The moment your emotions depend on another person, you have already surrendered the throne. You may believe you are acting freely, thinking independently, guiding your own destiny, yet your strings are quietly pulled by anyone who can provoke, silence, or validate you. A ruler who cannot rule himself is ruled by everyone else, and history is merciless in exposing this weakness. Consider the downfall of many leaders who appeared powerful but were undone by their own emotional vulnerability. Entire kingdoms collapsed because a ruler felt slighted, insulted, or ignored. Think of emperors who unleashed wars not for strategy, but for wounded pride. Do you see the danger? A single misplaced emotion can cost even the strongest their legacy. When your stability can be disrupted by an enemy's whisper, a friend's withdrawal, or a lover's indifference, you stand unguarded, naked before the world. So ask yourself, who currently has the ability to disturb your peace? Whose opinion can lift or shatter your confidence? Your answer reveals the true holder of your power. Emotional autonomy demands stripping these influences away, not through isolation, but through inner fortification. You are not required to become stone. Rather, you must become sovereign over your inner climate. When storms arise, you do not dissolve. You observe, calculate, and decide. Psychology teaches that human beings seek emotional co-regulation. We mirror moods, absorb energies, and unconsciously follow the emotional cues of others. This instinct once kept early societies unified and safe, but in the modern world it binds you to the instability of those around you. If someone's anger makes you react, they control you. If someone's praise makes you soar, they control you. And if someone's silence makes you anxious, they control you completely. To master emotional autonomy, you must separate stimulus from response. You must learn the discipline of pausing. A manipulator's greatest weapon is your impulsiveness. They count on your immediate reactions, your defensiveness, your desperation, your ego. But when you respond slowly, or not at all, you shift the balance. Suddenly they must guess, adapt, and recalibrate. You remove their leverage by refusing to dance to their emotional rhythm. Look at powerful historical figures who mastered this craft. They did not react like ordinary people. They cultivated an inner stillness that made others uneasy. Even when threatened, mocked, or betrayed, they measured their words with surgical precision. Their enemies could not predict them. Their allies could not sway them. Their autonomy was not coldness. It was command. Ask yourself how many of your decisions are reactions rather than choices. How often do you move because someone else's emotion pushed you? Emotional autonomy requires that you see every emotional influence as an attempted negotiation. You evaluate, never obey. You examine motives, never assume benevolence. You treat every emotional pull as a strategic event, not a personal wound. Some will claim that emotional independence is loneliness in disguise. But loneliness is merely the discomfort of being ungoverned. Once you confront it, dominate it, and use it, you realize solitude is a forge. It burns away weakness and reveals the architecture of your true will. When no one else regulates your emotions, you become stable in a way most people cannot comprehend. You become unreadable, unshakable, untouchable. And here lies the transformation. People follow those they cannot destabilize. Emotional autonomy does not make you distant, it makes you magnetic. Your calm becomes power. Your restraint becomes influence. Your ability to remain composed under pressure becomes a silent threat. Others sense that they cannot manipulate you, and this forces them into alignment. Mastering emotional autonomy is the first threshold you must cross if you wish to thrive alone. But it is only the beginning, because once your emotions belong solely to you, another challenge emerges. One far more subtle, far more dangerous, and far more revealing. This next challenge exposes the hidden architecture of your inner power, the part of you that others cannot see but constantly attempt to influence. It forces you to confront the deepest illusions you hold about strength, independence, and authority. Prepare yourself, because what comes next will determine whether you simply stand alone or rise untouchable. This is where transformation begins. Disengaging from the need for validation begins with confronting an uncomfortable truth. Most people live as reflections, not individuals. Their confidence rises and falls with applause, their identity bends under judgment, and their sense of worth hangs on the shifting opinions of those who barely understand themselves. This dependence is the invisible chain that binds them to mediocrity. If you wish to become untouchable, you must break it. Ask yourself, whose approval do you secretly chase? A family member? A friend? A crowd of strangers online? The moment you identify the source, you expose the dependency. And like any dependency, it can be manipulated. Throughout history, rulers controlled populations not by force alone, but by shaping what people feared losing: status, reputation, belonging. When a man needs approval to feel whole, he becomes obedient long before the command is spoken. Consider how easily validation can be weaponized. One compliment can make you loyal. One criticism can make you defensive. One silent disapproval can make you desperate. This is why manipulators withdraw affection at strategic moments. They know you will rush to earn it back. They know you will justify their behavior. They know you will doubt yourself before you doubt them. Tell me, how many times have you betrayed your own judgment simply to keep someone's approval? Psychology shows that humans are wired to avoid social rejection because, in ancient tribes, exile meant death. But you no longer live in the wilderness of primitive survival. The threat has changed, yet your biology reacts as if every frown is fatal. This is why the crowd holds such power. You fear being judged by people you will never meet again, opinions that will evaporate within hours, voices that carry no authority. And yet their shadow guides your actions. To disengage from validation, you must learn to see opinion as a tool, not a master. The most effective leaders in history understood this perfectly. They appeared to listen to the people, yet remained unmoved by their fluctuations. They used perception strategically, not as a mirror, but as a weapon. They shaped their image like armor, constructed intentionally, detached from emotion. They were not indifferent to reputation, but they refused to let reputation define them. You must adopt the same mindset. When someone praises you, accept it without intoxication. When someone criticizes you, analyze it without injury. Praise and blame become data, not commandments. Validation loses its hook because it no longer penetrates your identity. Instead of asking, "Do they approve of me?" you begin asking, "Why do they want me to feel this way? What advantage does it give them?" This shift alone dismantles the control others hold over you. Let me offer you a real scenario. Imagine someone begins treating you with sudden warmth. They flatter you, show interest, offer attention. You feel noticed, valued, understood. But a strategically minded person asks a different question: why now? What changed? What do they want? Many fall into manipulation because they mistake selective kindness for genuine connection. But selective kindness is often an investment, one which expects obedience in return. And consider the opposite. Someone gives you the cold shoulder. They ignore your message. They withhold approval. Immediately you feel tension, anxiety, the itch to fix it. This reaction is not loyalty, it is conditioning. They have discovered the lever that moves you. They will use it again and again until you reclaim your independence. To disengage from validation, you must become a sovereign observer. You watch your own reactions with the same detachment a strategist watches rival armies. You study the battlefield of emotion, but you do not fight blindly within it. The moment you stop chasing approval, people adjust. Some become unsettled, some become respectful. Regardless, it changes everything. Because what emerges after this shedding is a self that can no longer be swayed by praise or wounded by dismissal. A self guided by intention, not insecurity. A self that others cannot easily decode or control. But this transformation sets the stage for a more complex challenge. One that reaches beyond emotion or validation and enters the realm of strategic distance itself. And once you understand that principle, you will see how power truly shifts in silence. Strategic distance is not coldness. It is not arrogance. It is the deliberate space a powerful individual creates to prevent others from gaining emotional, psychological, or strategic leverage over them. Most people crowd themselves into weakness. They overshare, they over-explain. They reveal their fears, intentions, and vulnerabilities to anyone who gives them a moment of attention. And without realizing it, they place their power directly into the hands of others. Ask yourself, how much do people know about you? Not what you say publicly, but what they can deduce. Your triggers, your insecurities, your impatience, your hunger for connection. Every detail becomes a thread that someone can pull, and most of the time, they do not even need malicious intent. Human beings, by instinct, push where the boundary is weakest. They press where the door is left open. Strategic distance closes that door. History offers countless lessons. Successful rulers were never the ones who mingled carelessly or revealed their inner workings to everyone who asked. They understood that proximity breeds familiarity, and familiarity breeds contempt. The more predictable you are, the easier you are to undermine. The more available you are, the less you are valued. Power demands a degree of separation, not out of cruelty, but out of practicality. Think of an advisor who must maintain respect. If he jokes too freely, reveals too much of his personal life, or becomes too accessible, he loses the mystique that commands attention. Or consider a leader who tries too desperately to be liked. Soon, his subjects treat him as an equal, not an authority. Strategic distance allows respect to grow where closeness would smother it. But what does distance look like in your life? It begins with limiting access to your thoughts. You speak with intention, not impulse. You choose when to respond, and when silence is the sharper message, you allow others to wonder what you are thinking instead of giving them the comfort of certainty. Mystery is influence disguised as absence. In psychology, people pursue what they cannot fully grasp. Their minds fill the gaps, they project, they imagine. Strategic distance uses this natural tendency to your advantage. When others have only fragments of you, they begin to value those fragments more than your complete presence. Scarcity shapes perception. Consider the opposite scenario. Someone bombards you with emotional transparency. They reveal every wound, every insecurity, every disappointment. At first it may seem honest, but quickly it becomes predictable, even draining. Nothing is left to the imagination. There is no intrigue, no strength, no resilience. Their openness becomes a burden you wish to escape. Now imagine someone who reveals little, not out of fear, but out of discipline. Someone who speaks carefully, acts decisively, and does not allow others to intrude on their internal world. Their distance becomes a gravitational pull. You lean in, you pay attention. You want to know more because you cannot easily read them. Strategic distance creates value, but it also creates control. Let me give you a subtle example. When you respond instantly to every message, you signal anxious availability. When you adjust your schedule to accommodate everyone, you teach them that your time is negotiable. When you explain yourself too thoroughly, you teach them that you fear being misunderstood. All of this lowers your perceived power. Distance, instead, flips the dynamic. A delayed response suggests independence. A controlled schedule suggests discipline. A concise answer suggests confidence. Distance is not the absence of communication, it is the mastery of it. Ask yourself, who do you chase? Who do you give immediate access to? Who do you allow to dictate your pace? These are the people who quietly own your power. Strategic distance reclaims it. Yet there is a deception you must confront. Distance alone is not enough. If you retreat without intention, you become isolated. If you become silent without purpose, you appear weak. True strategic distance is calculated, consistent, and anchored in self-respect. It draws others toward you while preventing them from grasping your core. It is the balance between presence and absence, visibility and secrecy, approachability and untouchability. And once you master this balance, a new advantage reveals itself, one far more potent and far more dangerous, the ability to weaponize your independence so completely that solitude becomes leverage rather than limitation. This is where the next transformation begins. Turning isolation into leverage is the art few understand and even fewer master. Most view solitude as weakness. A void to be filled, a burden to be escaped. They seek allies, networks, reassurance, proof that they are not alone. But power does not emerge from comfort. It emerges from absence, from the ability to stand apart while remaining indispensable. Ask yourself, do you fear being alone? Or have you simply failed to recognize the weapon in your solitude? History is littered with examples of those who converted isolation into dominance. Consider the Roman generals who advanced alone into hostile territories, leaving their legions behind, or the cunning monarchs who retreated to their councils, allowing rivals to overextend themselves in the streets while they plotted in quiet confidence. They understood a truth often ignored: the world fears what it cannot predict, and isolation is the ultimate camouflage for intention. Isolation forces others to reveal themselves. When you withdraw from constant interaction, you observe the patterns, the alliances, the weaknesses that only emerge in your absence. People assume power lies in numbers, in visibility, in immediate influence. But while they compete for attention, you learn. You gain clarity. You see the motives behind their actions, the cracks in their facades, the subtle manipulations they employ against each other. Alone, you are free to watch the entire chessboard without interference. Psychologically, isolation sharpens the mind. In solitude, distractions fall away. The constant noise of social validation, of unnecessary explanations, of emotional pandering ceases. In that silence, your thoughts crystallize. You understand yourself in ways impossible when entangled with the expectations and emotions of others. Napoleon, in his exile, conceived strategies and reflections that could not have emerged amid the ceaseless chatter of court intrigue. Isolation forced insight, insight forced power, but beware the misconception: leverage does not come merely from sitting alone. It comes from intentional solitude. You must make your absence meaningful, strategic. Consider the tactician who removes himself from trivial quarrels, letting his opponents exhaust themselves, fight among themselves, or overcommit. By staying apart, he becomes the arbiter of outcomes without having drawn a sword or given a command. His very non-presence forces respect, breeds caution, and manipulates the behavior of others. Ask yourself when you retreat, are you merely hiding, or are you shaping the battlefield in secret? Leverage also emerges from unpredictability. When you are available to everyone, your value is diluted. When you are scarce, your presence commands attention. History shows that rulers who allowed constant access lost influence to could be sought but not easily reached. By standing apart, you create demand. Others adjust their strategies to account for you. They invest in gaining your notice. They act cautiously, knowing that your silence is not absence, but a calculated force. Isolation tests character, and therein lies the ultimate advantage. While others crumble under the pressure of social expectation, you remain composed. While others beg for alliance, you determine when and if to engage. While others panic when excluded, you thrive. The lesson is clear: the world's dependence on company is a weakness. Your comfort in solitude is strength. Even more potent is the psychological leverage this creates. People fear what they cannot influence. When you demonstrate calm, competence, and strategic patience in isolation, you unsettle those accustomed to manipulating the crowd. You become untouchable because your position is self-contained. No rumor, no praise, no critique can sway you easily. You are the silent force around which others orbit, unsure if your next move will reward or punish. Yet isolation is not merely defensive. It is a tool for offense. From this vantage point, you decide when to engage, when to intervene, when to strike. The choices of others are laid bare before you, their moves predictable, their weaknesses visible. Your solitude amplifies your capacity to act decisively. And so, the question arises, are you using your solitude to shrink from the world, or to master it? Because once you learn to turn isolation into leverage, a far more profound revelation awaits. The next stage is where absence becomes authority, where restraint becomes influence, and where your untouchable presence shapes not only your destiny, but the decisions of everyone who dares to observe you. The most dangerous moves are made not in the fray, but in the calculated quiet of standing apart. Building an identity that cannot be attacked is the pinnacle of untouchable power. Most people construct their sense of self on fragile foundations. The approval of peers, the validation of authority, or the fleeting admiration of strangers. These identities crumble at the first sign of opposition, leaving the individual exposed, vulnerable, and manipulable. Ask yourself how much of who you are relies on what others think of you. How many of your choices bend beneath the invisible weight of judgment? History teaches that those who survive the trials of ambition and human cruelty do so because their identity is unassailable. Consider Caesar at the Rubicon. His reputation, his aura, his carefully cultivated image of competence and decisiveness rendered attacks against him largely ineffective. Even those who opposed him feared the very idea of challenging his personhood. He did not rely solely on armies or alliances. He relied on a persona that could not be dismantled easily. And this is what you must emulate. To construct such an identity, you must first understand that perception is reality. Humans cannot escape it. They interpret, judge, and categorize constantly. If they perceive weakness, they exploit it. If they perceive indecision, they manipulate it. If they perceive inconsistency, they attack it. The wise individual, therefore, shapes perception deliberately. Your actions, your words, even your silence must coalesce into a pattern that signals strength, autonomy, and inevitability. Ask yourself, if someone sought to undermine you, what would they attack? How could you make yourself invulnerable to that assault? Psychology offers insight here. Humans respond not to raw truth, but to cues. Your posture, tone, consistency, and restraint are all signals that communicate stability and authority. When these are aligned, you become difficult to assault without risking retaliation or exposure. The world begins to treat you according to the image you have forged, not the private chaos that may exist Historical rulers understood this instinctively. Louis XIV, the Sun King, surrounded himself with ritual, spectacle, and an image of absolute control. Attack his throne, and one attacked an entire carefully constructed persona. But identity is not only projection, it is scarcity and selectivity. Those who reveal too much, who over-explain or justify, hand the keys of their persona to others. The moment someone knows your motivations, doubts, or strategies, they can dismantle your influence piece by piece. The untouchable know what to conceal and what to reveal sparingly. They allow others to fill the gaps with speculation. Often admiration, sometimes fear, but never certainty. Ask yourself how much of yourself is deliberately hidden. How much is weaponized ambiguity? Consistency is also the mortar of an unassailable identity. History remembers the great not for whim, but for predictability in their principles, unpredictability in execution. Alexander the Great, for instance, displayed unwavering ambition, yet his methods were unpredictable enough to keep allies and enemies alike off balance. Consistency breeds respect. Inconsistency breeds attack. Your identity must be a fortress, the walls visible, the foundation hidden, the defenses absolute. Strategically, this identity serves as armor and weapon. It deters attack, manipulates perception, and commands allegiance without effort. People align with those they cannot destabilize. They fear what they cannot understand. They follow what they cannot undermine. Every interaction becomes a subtle negotiation of influence. Your untouchable persona shapes behavior without raising a sword, without issuing a command, without displaying the vulnerabilities of flesh and emotion. And yet, the construction of this identity is not static. It must evolve with circumstance. Adaptation ensures that it remains untouchable. The world shifts, alliances fracture, enemies observe, and your identity must withstand all without revealing cracks. Ask yourself, are you shaping yourself to survive one moment or to remain untouchable across decades? But even a fortress of selfhood has its final test. Beyond perception, consistency, and concealment lies the challenge of internal truth. Can you maintain this identity without collapsing under your own awareness? Can you reconcile public strength with private imperfection? The next principle, the ultimate refinement, confronts this paradox. It reveals how untouchable identity becomes absolute influence, and how influence becomes the final frontier of sovereignty. Because once your persona cannot be attacked, once your presence commands respect without effort, the world does not simply respond to you, it bends around you. And that is where untouchable begins to feel inevitable. Power is not seized in plain sight. It is whispered, suggested, and orchestrated behind the veil of normalcy. Influence is not declared, it is insinuated. You control not by force alone, but by shaping perception, guiding desire, and manipulating the unseen strings that bind others to your will. Ask yourself who truly moves your decisions, and who moves theirs without them ever realizing it. The world bows to those who remain unreadable. It yields to those who act with precision while others chase emotion. Every gesture, every word, every silence can become a tool. Every observer can become a pawn. The individual who masters subtlety, observation, and calculated detachment wields more power than armies, wealth, or public acclaim. Do not flaunt your control. Let it grow in the shadows. Let others believe they act freely, even as you orchestrate the outcome. This is the essence of untouchable authority. Now, I ask you, what will you do with this knowledge? Comment your thoughts below. Subscribe to uncover more Machiavellian strategies. Share this video, and let others wonder who truly guides their choices. The game is always in motion. Are you ready to play it wisely?